Think back to when you were in school. If you brought home a report card with an A in English, a B in science, and a D in mathematics, what happened next? Almost universally, your parents didn't celebrate the A, instead they hired a tutor for the D. You spent the next 3 years agonizing over algebra formulas, crying over homework, and dragging that grade from a failing 40 up to a thoroughly mediocre 65 marks. But while you were drowning in your weakest subject, do you know what happened to that English grade? The one that could have easily become a 95 or a 100? It was completely neglected, its fire went out. We live in a culture obsessed with fixing flaws. We are told that growth means patching up our deficits. But what if this conventional wisdom is a lie? What if dedicating your life to fixing your weaknesses is the single fastest way to ensure you remain utterly replaceable? Today, we are going to look at the counterintuitive psychology of high performance. We will uncover the scientifically proven way to manage your weaknesses while building an extraordinary life based on your top 5% of talent. Let's start with a brutal truth. In the modern world, the market does not reward well-rounded people, the market rewards spikes. It rewards professionals who are so uniquely spectacular at one specific thing that they are impossible to ignore. In the classic book, Now, Discover Your Strengths, Marcus Buckingham and Dr. Donald Clifton argue that a true strength is built like this: talent multiplied by investment. Talent is your natural pattern of thinking, feeling, or behaving. It's your brain's hardwiring. Investment is the time you spend practicing, building skills, and gaining knowledge. Here is the catch. If your natural talent in an area is a 2 out of 10, no matter how much you multiply it by investment, your maximum output will always be low. If you invest a massive 5 units of effort into a 2 talent area, you get a score of 10. You went from terrible to below average. But what happens if you take that same 5 units of effort and apply it to an area where your natural talent is an 8 or a 9? Your output shoots up to a 40 or a 45, you become world class. When you spend your life trying to fix what's wrong with you, you are engaging in a low-return investment strategy. You are pouring your limited, precious lifetime energy into shifting an arbitrary score from a 40 to a 65, and you are now completely average at something you hate doing. Meanwhile, your true competitive advantage, that effortless 5% of innate talent, has withered away. Why are we so terrified of having weaknesses? It stems from a psychological bias known as the deficit model of growth. We think that if we have a flaw, it makes us incomplete or vulnerable. But if you look closely at history's greatest achievers, none of them were well-rounded. Albert Einstein was a generational genius in theoretical physics, but his interpersonal skills and administrative abilities were notoriously chaotic. Steve Jobs was a visionary product designer and storyteller, but by many accounts, a nightmare to manage in terms of routine corporate logistics. Did Steve Jobs pause Apple's operations to take a remedial class on empathetic middle management or accounting? No, he surrounded himself with people like Tim Cook, who excelled exactly where he was weak. In his book Essentialism, author Greg McKeown writes about the power of the disciplined pursuit of less. He argues that when we try to do everything and be everything, we make a millimeter of progress in a million different directions. When you buy into the myth of the well-rounded person, you scatter your vital energy. You become a jack of all trades, master of absolutely none. True impact requires extreme focus. It requires you to consciously decide what you are going to be bad at, so that you can have the energy to be spectacular at what matters. Now, let's address the obvious counter-argument. Am I saying you should just completely ignore your flaws? If you're terrible at managing money, should you just let yourself go bankrupt? If you have an explosive temper, should you just say, "Well, it's not my talent," and alienate everyone around you? Of course not. There is a massive difference between developing a weakness to a baseline level of competence and trying to turn a weakness into a strength. We need to move away from trying to fix weaknesses and instead adopt a strategy of weakness management. How do we do this? We can use the harm reduction framework, drawing insights from Greg McKeown's book, Effortless. The goal is to make managing your flaws require as little mental friction as possible. Step 1. Identify if the weakness is a fatal flaw. A fatal flaw is a deficit that actively blocks your success or actively harms others. If you are an aspiring executive but you completely freeze up during public speaking, that is a bottleneck. You don't need to become a world-class motivational speaker. You just need to train yourself to deliver a clear, 10-minute presentation without panicking. You aim for the good enough baseline, and then you stop. Step 2. Automate or delegate. If a task falls into your area of weakness, stop trying to grit your teeth through it, find an effortless system. If you are terrible at organizing spreadsheets but brilliant at sales, use your sales success to hire an assistant, or utilize AI and automation tools to handle the data tracking. Step 3. Redesign your environment, focusing relentlessly on the value you produce rather than how a job makes you feel. If your environment constantly demands things you are fundamentally wired to be bad at, don't try to change your brain, change your environment. Pick a niche, a role, or an industry where your specific weaknesses literally do not matter, and where your specific strengths are highly leveraged. Once you have successfully contained your weaknesses so they are no longer destructive, your main job begins. Aggressively doubling down on your top 5% of talent. Cal Newport argues that to get a dream career, one that offers autonomy, impact, and financial freedom, you need what he calls career capital. These are rare and valuable skills. You do not build rare and valuable skills by fixing your flaws. You build them by entering what psychologists call the state of flow. And flow happens at the intersection of high challenge and your innate natural talent. When you focus on your strengths, your learning curve isn't flat, it's exponential. You pick up nuances faster than others, you notice patterns they miss. What feels like grueling labor to someone else feels like an engaging puzzle to you. This is how you become irreplaceable. If you spend your whole life fixing your 40-score weaknesses, you become a standardized, predictable corporate cog. You are a 65 across the board. Anyone can replace a 65. But nobody can replace the person who has optimized their natural talent into a blindingly sharp 95 or 100. Some people worry that accepting their weaknesses means adopting what renowned psychologist Carol Dweck calls a fixed mindset, the belief that your abilities are set in stone. But true strength-based development is actually the ultimate expression of a growth mindset. A growth mindset doesn't mean believing you can be anything you want to be. It means believing you can become a radically better, more developed version of who you already are. It's about having the humility to say, I am not universally perfect, there are things I am bad at, and that is okay. My time on this earth is limited, and I choose to give my energy to my potential, not my deficits. Stop letting the world convince you that you are a broken machine that needs to be repaired. You are not a collection of flaws waiting to be patched. You are a unique configuration of potential waiting to be unleashed. Stop wasting your life patching up a 40. Protect your weaknesses from hurting you, but invest your soul into your 95. That 5% of raw talent is where your true value lies. It's time to stop fixing and start soaring. If this video challenges the way you view your own growth, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who is currently burning themselves out trying to be perfect at everything. Until next time, stay focused on what makes you unique. Thank you for watching.